Hi, my name is Brandon Krieger. In today's Daily Cyber, I'm going to be interviewing Karl Galbraith. He's a cybersecurity consultant, virtual CISO, CTO, and startup advisory board member. Karl provides cyber and AI trusted advisory services spanning envisioning, transform, protect, respond, and trust stages of the cybersecurity lifecycle roadmap. He leverages over 25 years of security and IT expertise and experience, successfully selling, building, delivering, and performing audits on commercial and in-house software product solutions in the public sector, Fortune 500, and startup environments. His corporate infosec executive, co-founder, technical leadership roles at 10 Ottawa 1.0 startup includes Electronic Courthouse, Eccentrics, acquired by High Road Capital Partners, Nuance, and Intercert, formerly FileTrek, and Gridon Software, acquired by Microfocus in 2019, specialized in enterprise technology focus on secure track, trace, security analytics, SOC, dashboards, and endpoint agent solutions. Karl spent 5 years with Canadian Bank Note Corp, whereas acting CISO, Director of IT Security, he oversaw corporate information security systems technology, product management development, and delivering a secure track and trace solution. Karl has a wealth of knowledge and experience. So we're going to be talking in depth of what's going on in the cybersecurity industry from a CISO level, from a top-down approach. As you can tell, I wanted to give you his bio just because he has a lot of knowledge, a lot of expertise to be able to pull from and learn from in this interview. So please grab a coffee, grab a tea, and let's hack at it. I'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, USATO. USATO is a Canadian-based cybersecurity company that provides 24/7 cybersecurity support and compliance service that align their customers' tolerance for risk, their clients, suppliers, and government contractual mandates. USATO's teams focus on using insights to drive business decisions. There's no need to leave strategies to chance, when insights can be used to show what changes need to be made and how to make them. USATO offers multiple services to help companies simplify IT, centralize cybersecurity management, and meet compliance standards. USATO can customize their service to work with your existing IT network and programs. For more information, contact USATO at info@uzado.com or visit their website at www.uzado.com. Hey, Karl, so how's your day going so far?
So far, so good. How about you?
It's been busy. I don't know if you're seeing with phase 2 and companies are starting to open up again. Like it's just starting to go gangbusters.
Yeah, that's a good call. I know everyone, I hate to relate it to COVID, but phase 1 was kind of a rapid kind of VPN. Everybody spent a lot of money. And then there was a big gasp as they thought perhaps the security budgets were all, pushed up front, and then there'd be kind of a quiet period. Hasn't, phase 2 is kind of what do we do about compliance now that we, if we send everyone home and we set up VPN and, are we maybe offside on security compliance? So there is this second wave coming in. Normally, summer's a bit of a lull if you're in Ottawa and the public sector. So a bit of a surprise there, but quite welcome. And let's see we're all holding our breath for the third wave, right? What's going to happen in Q3 and Q4 and whether or not we might have spent the year's budget up front.
Right, that's true. Well, I think what happens, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you're seeing this as well, as soon as COVID-19 hit, companies scattered, right? Like their whole workforce was remote. Now the attack chain and vector and their landscape changed. So they were doing things like overnight. It was stuff that maybe been on their roadmap for the year now happened in like 24 to 48 hours.
Yeah, I mean, you watch all the BNN news of the Ciscos of the world, and they have that kind of Cheshire cat smug grin because their stocks went up. And they kind of, on the other hand, they're a bit ahead of the curve, right? The Googles and the Ciscos kind of went, we're eating our own dog food here a little bit, drinking our own champagne or whatever you want to say, in the sense that we already had 50% of our workforce at home. It was part of our BCP DR plan. And I think you all now need to execute along the same lines as we do.
Right.
And to that end, you're right that the attack vector suddenly switched. And it accelerated a bunch of things that I'd been working on. I'm kind of a future state guy. And so 5 years out, and those things come into play, AI, all those kind of what I call perfect storm things came home to roost as work from home became a thing.
Right, which I think is kind of crazy when you look at it, is that, you know, a lot of companies like Trend Micro, Cisco, all these guys had these remote offering cloud solutions, kind of all this ready, all packaged, and all of a sudden this happened, and it was like you said, it was Christmas for them, right?
Yeah.
Because now everyone's needing to get it like now, not like, oh, let's go through this slow sales cycle. It was, I need it by tomorrow.
Well, and to be honest, as a security guy that came from the dark side, kind of the business and the vendor startup side, where you're everyone used to be a CIO before CISOs were cool. And I think my opinion is security should be a business enabler. So in other words, business drives the train. And as a security person, that terrifies me in the sense of everybody work from home, let's set up Zoom, and suddenly all the guardrails are down. But that's still a security driver, right? If you're running around kind of as the as Eeyore, the security cop, no one's going to listen to you and give you money. On the other hand, if business has a need and they need security with it, that's a very different driver, right? And so that's exactly a real opportunity for people to get budget pushed through that wanted to do security stuff. Yes, you've got to tie it to work from home, but on the other hand, it accelerated a lot of programs. It also got rid of a lot of programs that, frankly, weren't adding direct value other than the security people were really happy at having a better SOC.
So talk about that. Like, so what are you seeing that's actually being removed now from the security and maturity program?
Right. So the big thing I'm seeing is kind of the defense in depth, top-down SOC. And what I mean by that is your SIMs and your perimeter and your endpoint stuff. I think they all got bought and they all served us well, but they're very linear and very much perimeter, right? The idea was we got everybody in the castle, now build a moat and all those other wonderful things. And the new answer is, well, wait a minute. Everybody's out of the castle. All your data's outside, like it or not. It happened overnight. So do you need a big internal SOC SIM project, or do you more need to start, to my point, zero trust? And the other part is the SOAR part. And what I mean by that is, security, orchestration, automation, and response. Two parts in there matter. Number one is, hey, I bought a SIM and I bought some firewalls and perimeter stuff and IPDS and I bought endpoint, but like, are they all integrated and coming together? Because my IR costs and my SOC costs, I see a lot of swivelware going on, right? Like people got 7 or 8 windows open and they seem to be hydraulically managing all the different inputs. And when I try to do an incident response, I get 10 people in a room that don't sound like they're using integrated tools. And so
it's not one pane of glass.
It's yeah, exactly right. The single pane of glass story with SIM and rolling up firewall stuff and rolling up EPO type data, that never really happened, right? It was very a lot of false positives, very linear, when in fact IR is a nonlinear kind of. What I mean by that is people don't look at a bunch of logs and go, there's a problem. They kind of dive in, kind of telescope down and come back up and go, hey, I had a theory, but I was wrong. That's not where the bad guy is. Let's try again. Kind of like OODA loops, and that's much more how SOC people operate, right? They have a hunch and they dive down at the data and follow their nose, and then they come back up for air and go, that theory wasn't right. Whereas SIM and all that other stuff was much more compliance and linear, and wasn't in real time. So I think what happened was people went, okay, we're not buying yet another tool. I want you to start integrating and automating what I already got. My problem's on the people and process side. It's not on the technology side.
Right. Now, do you find, talking about people and process, do you find that's a hard thing to manage, especially with the lack of resources or limited resources changing, moving from, like, once they get educated, moving from company to company?
I think that's a brilliant point, and it's that, 3 years ago when I was running the Bell SOC, by running, I mean, director, and so you had like 200 people and a bunch of managers, and that typical call center tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 thing. The myth was, there's a skill shortage, and the answer was
Right.
yeah, there's a skill shortage. That one single guy at the top, the ethical hacker and the indispensable troubleshooter, he's worth $250K, and I can't keep him. But below him are some pretty good people, and at the bottom are some people that are out of school, and they could be good, but they're tier 1, right? They're by compliance and by SOP. They're just call center people, and they're making $60K. So I felt the problem was less about skill shortage and more about, this is costing a lot of money, and I'm not going to train them. Like, in 5 years, I'm not going to have 10 tier 3 guys. Those people are created on their own, right? They're hackers, and they didn't go to school, and they certainly didn't work their way through the ranks. So I think the myth of talent shortage is where I'm going, and that you're never going to solve that problem, right? These people are, number one, to your point, if they're really good, they're gone in 2 years out of a traditional SOC, and they're on their own, like me, making independent consulting money. Number two is you're not you can't build them. Not like network admin or your call center thing, where like you groom people over time and then they get 5 to 10 years in and they're like a senior sysadmin. That's not a reality in security at all. So
you think so?
Well, I think that if you look at who's really good in security, they're self-made. Like the people that are, I sliced in late in life, and so I lucked out in terms of my career background, and then kind of do the CISO thing, and I did some startups in UEBA, so analytics came, and I'm in the right place at the right time. But the people, that are, say, 30-something, they're in there with me. They're kind of that IR manager, indispensable ethical hacker. They're guns for hire, right? They haven't been, they did their 2 to 5 in a stock and learned stuff, but 90% of it they did on their own, right? There's no handbook on how to find bad guys. You're kind of out there in the dark web, and you're reading stuff, and you're hacking, right? You're just using your time in the SOC to develop your troubleshooting skills. I don't mean to say that, there wasn't a lot of good training, and you don't learn about firewalls, you don't learn about compliance, but I didn't feel like I was building people towards me. I felt like I was a AAA farm system, and that after 5 years, these guys would go out and hunt on their own.
Right.
And
yeah, it makes sense. I mean, and that's why I'm asking, because I'm part of the DEF CON 416 group, and hearing what those guys do and how they develop out. And I totally agree. It's independent. Like, it's not on the job unless you're a pen tester and you're getting new jobs and you're testing your skills. And then while you're studying your OSCP and then going and doing new jobs, like Wi-Fi and application, I completely agree with that. Right. I mean, completely, totally. But it comes to your point is, and this is one thing I want everyone to hear, this is that security is not a role that you just get in and you sit. It's something that you have to hustle in, like you have to work.
Yeah, it's it's a scarce skill, and the other equivalency is AI is equally a scarce skill, where you can say you're an analytics guy and maybe you can take an engineering degree, but we're talking at the very top a bunch of PhDs, and then a lot of other people coming in that are like you said, they may have a degree, they may not have a degree, but they're very self-taught, and to your point, their peer group is a club. It's an informal meetup, or it's a bunch of pen testers that are sharing best practices in an OWASP meeting. Those are the people, in my case, I kind of laugh and go, I'm a recovering CISO. We're more like the NHL coaches. There's 24 of us and we get fired every 2 years, but there's only 24 of us, so we move around. But that's who I talk to, right? A CISO can't go in an organization and talk to the CIO or the CEO about security best practices. They have to go find other CISOs to share best practices, and who to hire and which technology do you buy. Well, same thing at the pen test, VA scan, ethical hacker level. They're in their own peer group. And so I equate it maybe not to hockey players, but to hockey players practice together, right? And they train together. They don't rely on the NHL team to tell them how to be ready for becoming a better hockey player. But a lot like doctors, if you're a surgeon at a hospital, who's your peer group? Well, it's other surgeons, and you're going to conferences, and you're sharing best practices on shoulder operations. You're not using the hospital hierarchy.
Right.
You're this expert that's expected to bring the expertise in, not learn it on the job.
Right, exactly. And like I said, I totally agree with that. And unless, like you said, you're in that role, like you're a pen tester or something that you're doing that and you're getting massive exposure, you're not just doing, let's even say like Internet of Things and that's all you do, but you're getting exposure to other different pen tests, different, red team tests, anything along that line. Then now it's going to develop your skills. But like to your point, it has to be learned outside too. Yeah. Like these guys constantly, like you hear Capture the Flags, you hear in these events, they're always going to this, and it's like they're always competing.
A couple of things there, talking to the kids, as I say, because I'm really careful to say I sliced in, I moved up, and I'm looking top down at the experience. And like I said, CISO became cool about 10 years ago, so I'm in the right place at the right time. But the people that I see coming up and excelling have two things, and it's the opposite of my engineering career and kind of CIO, and we got to be an enterprise architect. It's not degrees. Nobody cares about what your degree is, but it's passion and perseverance are the big two. So you gotta love cyber, just like you gotta love analytics, or you gotta love being a doctor, right? And number two is the people that I heard broke out of the SOC and got to be really good and independent when I interviewed them. They kind of said, and much like you, it's they really loved it, so they started hanging around with people that were really good. Just as a fanboy, through osmosis, they learned some best practices. And the other part was the perseverance. They just, every time they saw a problem in the SOC, they wouldn't let it go. And they'd spend hours and hours because it would bug them that they hadn't found the bad guy, or that traffic, that little snippet of traffic didn't make sense. So their brains kept chasing the problem. And they started developing these OODA loops and intuition and whatever it was, just unwilling to let go of a problem, seemed to be one of the predictors of how they, got really good.
Right. And that's such a great point. And I mean, people that are watching this thinking they're going to go into cybersecurity, those are some things that you need to know going in. It's not something that you go get your Security Plus or your CISSP or you do that and then you're one and done. It is, okay, now that just opened the door. That just kind of gave you a little introduction.
That's an interesting part. And it's, you can talk about that, in the top. When it's a scarce skill and it's a 1% type money thing, you have to expect that things are going to change rapidly. And cyber's no exception, right? The bad guys, to your point, not only are they learning new techniques, and just because you've learned something or you found a SIM and you go, I got them, within a year they're going to get around it. And number two is, like you say, all of a sudden work from home says, the data's not in here, it's out there. So you've got a totally different problem and a different attack vector than you thought you had. So if you can't continually evolve your story, and even myself as a recovering CISO and guy that walks in top down and kind of talks security roadmap, the story I had 5 years ago is totally changed. From even 2 years ago, I was coming around saying, hey, it's analytics and it's UEBA and I'm the future. Now I'm not, right? Now they're talking about IoT and hey, you put in a bunch of AI and analytics, guess what's happening? The bad guys are gaming the analytics. So it's a whole spy versus spy thing that says, whatever story you had, Karl, you got a half-life of 18 months. And I get it because that's a CISO and they tend to get kicked out, like I said, like hockey coaches. But also my story has to evolve every year and a half if I want to be relevant, even as a consultant.
Right. Now talk about the challenge here, and you're talking about cybersecurity and the security of the future of it. But is it really an unfair battle? You got your blue team, your red team, you got your hackers, the negatives, and you got your kind of your positive guys are trying to. Is it really kind of this unfair fight?
Yeah, I talk a lot about that. That's a great. So my analogy is having been an EA type CIO person. You picking Microsoft doesn't get you fired. That kind of life. That's bowling, And what cyber is as a CISO is baseball. I'm
Right.
pitching and I just got to throw strikes. Problem is there's a batter. The other thing
Right.
is that batter cheats. Like I've got to
Right.
throw, to use baseball stats, you're a good batter if you're batting 300. So
Right.
that means 7 out of 10 times I'm winning. But I lose the game if you get, 3 runs. If I make more than 3 mistakes out of 10, you're winning. It's an asymmetric advantage, almost like the game of Red Rover. You can have a whole lineup of really strong people, and I might be one guy on the other side. All I'm going to do is pick your weakest link and run through it. I only need to get through
Right.
once, and then I'm in. And so that asymmetric advantage is totally benefits the batter, for lack of a better.
Right.
And the other thing about a batter is the batter cheats, right? A batter cork its bat. A batter will take steroids. You can counteract that as a pitcher, but you're playing defense. And so
Right.
the idea there is, what's the one thing you got going for you? I liken it to a robber in your house. Like you're constantly thinking defense in your house, and someone breaks in. Your only advantage is it's your home turf. So if the lights are all
Right.
out in your house, I know where the jewelry is. I know where the guns are. I know where my kids are. I know all the escape routes in the dark. I have a huge advantage over a robber in that sense. If you're a robber, not to say I am, but to put him in that, he's very afraid of being detected and very afraid of a confrontation. He may have a weapon, but his first instinct is to run out of the house because he's in unfamiliar territory. Well, let's equate that to security. If you know your network, if you have visibility and really accurate inventory, if you've done your cyber hygiene, you have that's your home field advantage over a bad guy, right? He can get in, and I liken it to a baseball diamond. But if if it's a home game and I'm in Fenway Park and I know the nooks and crannies and I'm the pitcher, I can kind of control the game. That's my only advantage over the unfair advantage of, like I say, an asymmetric bad guy.
See, the way I look at it, and that was a great point that you brought out in the kind of the analogy in the scenario. The one thing I've seen, and I've worked physical security, so I used to work for the Sky Dome doing actual physical security, right? So you have your alerts, you have your alarms, your CCTV cameras, you have your patrols, you have all that, your response time, you have all this. No different from actual, cyber security. It's all the same kind of realm. But what happens is we have rules they don't.
Yes.
Right? We have rules that we have to abide by. Like, we can't do this, we can't do that.
Yeah.
We have to do it in a certain way. Even like when you look at, restraining someone or doing that, there has to be a process where there is no rules on their side. Yeah. They can do whatever they want, when they want, in the time frame. Use any tools they have to their availability. They can do all that. We can't. So it gives us it's one of like having one hand tied behind our back, trying to defend, right?
You know who makes the best ethical hackers? Contrarians. So I was not when I was an engineer at Nortel, I was the lab guy and I was the load bill guy, and a hacker was a derogatory term of someone who wasn't really good at coding and following coding best practices. On the other hand, you could go in the lab and you knew what people's passwords would do, and you do all these scripts and hacks. And so you knew how to beat the system because you knew everyone else was following coding rules. And so it's the same logic. The people that I had in-house, and they're called ethical hackers, to your point, thought like bad guys. They didn't follow any rules, and they took advantage of the fact that you all have to.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's the main point we always have to think about is if you're getting into this field, is having that mindset, being able to look at what they are thinking and what's the scope, like how far will they go? And, as being in the industry for many, many years, there is no limit.
Right.
If they really want to get that, that gold, they're going to do whatever it takes, from social engineering to hacking the perimeter to malware, whatever that may be, they're going to try.
Yeah. And they're getting in. I really like whoever coined the term APT, Advanced Persistent Threat. Again, back to the house analogy. Better bike lock on your house means he'll just go to the neighbors. If he's a break-in guy and he's looking to smash and dash, you can stop that with defense in depth. Make it harder to get in my house, have alarm systems, all that. But if the person wants to get Karl, or Karl has sensitive data, or Karl has some really expensive jewelry, and he's very focused on my house, he's going to take his time and scope it out. He's going to get in, right? My locks and my at some point, he's going to get intel of when I'm away, or maybe the code to my automatic garage door opener. An APT can get in because they have the motive, means, and resources to do so. And so you have to understand that if you're a tier 1 target, or even an espionage target, there's understanding your threats and why they want to get at you and what they want. That helps narrow the threat surface area, not just in terms of presenting a small surface area, but understanding who's really going to put in effort to get in here and why. Well, I know it's this data, and I know it's on these servers, and I know it's this guy, so I can kind of look at his TTPs, even if it's the Russian military or something, like some advanced threat like that. You go, yeah, but I kind of understand how they operate. I know exactly what they care about, and I know exactly where that is. So I can kind of do it, again, back to the pitcher analogy. If I know that this guy's a home run hitter and he's right-handed and he's trying to pull the ball, I'll just keep pitching him outside. Like, there's an advantage to knowing who the bad guy is, what he's after, and what his techniques are.
Right. And for sure. And for you guys that are listening to this is really great points to think about as you're getting the cybersecurity field, or even you're growing into it, to make sure that you're having that kind of mentality of looking at the other side and, doing your research, meeting up with other colleagues, having these questions. And I mean, even sometimes just looking at forums and just how like compromises are happening, like how are they breaking in? I know for physical security, going to conferences and seeing that, you're hearing that constantly, like, using your analogy of the house. The one funny thing that I kept hearing was, yeah, but they just break the window.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you mean? You have a lock in the door, you have alarm systems, you have all that, but they go right through the window.
Another good analogy. I worked at a company that does banknotes, lotteries, and passports. Same idea, where you're expending a tremendous amount of money with bulletproof glass on the front door, because that's how you go through, and you go through the turnstiles in an early fashion. The RCMP spec ops type people that came in and talked to us went, shipping, receiving. I'm coming in the back door. I'm backing a truck in and smashing that. And all you've got is probably one guy and no security guard there. And if I'm lucky, you've got pallets full of your payload sitting there for me. I went, wow, that like, they're thinking like a bad guy. Right.
And they're in and out with the response time of 15 minutes. They're in and out, and they've got, a certain amount of products, whatever inventory, and they're out.
Yep.
They throw the truck in and they're gone. And that was the same thing when we were working with the Skydome. The response time was so important. It wasn't just monitoring detection, but how fast can you respond?
I like that comment. And I always go back to physical security. It's the, if you played football and you talk to somebody who's never played football and they explain how to quarterback, you go, the part you're missing is the 6'6" 4 people that say they're going to kill you and are running at you. Right. And sometimes in security, white collar security, you forget about that physical aspect and go, you got to understand they're coming for you, and you don't have a lot of time. So back to your point on what about SIMs and what changed is, I'm starting to see kind of a movement to outcome based KPIs. So back in the day, the SIM was, hey, I had 20,000 notifications and only one of them was a bad guy. And so here's my, monitor of monitors says everything's green. And we all started to understand, I think you're not seeing all the threats. Like your batting average, if you're trying to get a payload yield, it's how many bad guys did I catch. Well, get over to the modern KPIs. And I like some of the stuff, it's CrowdStrike. CTO pushed something out, and he talked about breakout time. So what I care about is time to detect, and that should be a minute. Otherwise, the guy's doing damage. Breakout time, I think, is average APT when they get inside takes them less than an hour to privilege escalate. So breakout time is, okay, he broke into Brandon's laptop. No harm, no foul. But if he's moved from Brandon's laptop into a server, or he's gathered sysadmin privileges, that's a big problem, because now he's moving laterally. And either he's just looking around and living off the land, or he's going for a target and he's kind of got this sysadmin-like power to get into your databases. Not good, right? And so understanding the difference between detection, and the guy's inside and his breakout time, you've got to be able to stop that, or at least detect that in less than an hour. to limit the damage. Okay, he got into Brandon's laptop and he took some emails and he took some stuff and he can move forward, but he didn't get out with anything. If I stop him before the breakout time, that's a huge impact, right? And the second part is time to remediate. Okay, he got into Brandon's laptop. What's the bug or what's the exploit? And have I patched it, or is he just going to come back in again? So those three, the breakout time, time to detect, and time to respond. To your point, in a physical situation, you understand that, right? That equals injured people and damage and a lot of make or break kind of binary outcomes. We need to build those same type of sense of urgencies into the current cyber KPIs.
So let me ask you about that. Like, how's that going in a company model? Because I mean, you're at the high level talking down, talking about physical. Now, what about in cyber? Are we benefiting from that? Are we starting to move forward?
I think if you the rule of thumb I heard from the CrowdStrike blog was 1-5-60, like 1 minute to detect, 5 minutes to respond, and 60 minutes you've got some collateral damage. And if you apply those KPIs to the current systems, they'll fail miserably. But you'll have some numbers, right? Maybe it's 1 hour and 24 hours, and that's not good relative to what the bad guys can do. But at least you know where you are, and now you're going to buy stuff or do people and process things that move those chains. And you suddenly, that's my point, where you suddenly find, I got an antivirus product. And I go, how's it helping you with any of those things?
Right.
I'm finding lots of bugs, or maybe I'm doing VA scans and finding lots of vulnerabilities. But if they're just piling up at the desk of the analyst and I'm not patching, did I move to?
You're not remediating.
Yeah. So suddenly you get into this, we're doing terrible, but we're on the clock. And so now your whole program is based on moving towards those metrics. And it's a shades of gray win to your point of, well, the bad guy has an asymmetric advantage. And my angle is, but if I move it, if it's 24 hours, everybody from the Russians to a script kiddie is getting in and getting out. If I move that 24 hours, maybe not to an hour, but to let's say 6 hours, well, now I've made it a little harder, for that spectrum of people to get in. And my threat surface area is now worried about the Russians. Okay, well, that's a very good narrowing of priorities if you're a CISO and you don't have enough money and time.
Right. Now, go back to my original question. How realistic is this for companies to implement to meet these benchmarks?
Right. Good question. And it goes to the outsource model. I think back to your point on, space race, scarce talent, I think unless you're a tier 1 target and you've got a tier 1 budget, impossible. Even the NSA would probably say, hey, we got all the time and money and the desire to be locked down. We can't do it. Like, no amount of money in the world will stop the fact that in a year the ball's moved, right? So my answer is, unless you're a tier 1 target, maybe Wall Street, healthcare, government, and within there's just parts of it, there's no way to meet those. And so what you're trying to do is approach them. And I think for smaller companies that are tier 2, or like smaller companies or big companies that are tier 2, I really don't think the homegrown model works. It won't scale.
Okay. Right. Yeah, and that's why I was kind of like it's an interesting concept, but then you go back to like the clients you probably dealt with, and same with myself, to have that 1 minute, 5, and then 60 seconds or an hour to respond, and to have that, I kind of look at them and I go, I don't think they would ever be able to meet that. Like that would be a high, and the team that they would need to be able to do that, right? That would be completely outsourced. That would have to be something else, right? So
yeah. So and then you think of what we're just talking about, and I could say the same thing to the CIO. How are you going to meet all those SLAs that people are demanding for bandwidth and application? The answer is you can't, so you go cloud.
Right.
And
for sure.
I think the same with security is you got to go cloud. For I get that creates a new problem, but your data is already outside, and you want to still have ownership of your data and control. But if you want to meet some kind of metrics like that, Amazon and Azure have the scale to do it, number one. Two, they have the ability to constantly refresh their security posture. And number three, I think analytics. You just don't have enough gerbils on a treadmill going fast enough in real time to analyze all the data. So the only way out is analytics. So AI, right? And
right.
I get those things I just brought up create all kinds of new problems, but it's the only way to address your KPI, right? Go cloud, go analytics, start to approach those numbers. And at some point, it's a money decision, right? Do you really need to get down to 1,560? Or is, 30 minutes, 24 hours good enough?
Right. So talk about, and you bring up cloud, and you bring up a good, conversation with that, because a lot more companies were maybe in a hybrid solution now have gone completely over to cloud because of COVID-19.
Yeah.
What do you say? What are you saying with that now?
So certainly we are flexing that debate in public sector. There's a very strong, in a big company, you're very strong perimeter, right? You've got your Palo Alto, Cisco, Fortinet type, and you're pretty happy with it, and you spend a lot of time on it with regard to security policies and rules and investment. And overnight, you do see some movement to the cloud. And so if you're an SMB, great. You didn't really have an investment in perimeter, and so it makes total sense to go cloud. And to be honest, some of the CASB companies, the Zscalers and the Netscopes, have really built out kind of a ZTNA model very quick in the cloud. And ZTNA is where you need to go. The problem is if you've got this perimeter investment that's hanging around, you kind of have to go hybrid. So what I saw with work from home is, okay, everybody cloud. And I'm like, that makes sense. And if you're just, working from home on Office 365, and Zoom, you can get a lot done until it's time for payroll and you got to go to SAP, or until, I'm looking for other examples of where the application is either connected to the perimeter or has to stay in there maybe for sensitivity reasons. And you go, wait, I need both. And so this cloud thing I just built is pretty awesome. And it works really well for Office 365, but there's a long tail back into my other applications to make that work. The second part is, how's compliance work in there? Because over in the perimeter, I had layers and layers and layers of firewall rules and policy, and it may have been ugly, but I had a lot of it, right? And it was compliant. Right. And so how do I rebuild all that? Because the agent I got in the cloud doesn't know anything about all these policies. Do I have to go rebuild all that? Or is there, the win's going to be if you can parlay what you got existing outside. And right now, that's a tough sell to industry. ZTNA is a fairly new concept, and I think it's here to stay. The whole segment.
So talk about that. Talk about ZTNA.
Right. So my view of the world of ZTNA is zero trust, trust nothing, which is kind of to your point on asymmetric advantage, and APTs are getting in. Underneath that, there's four underpinnings that I care about. Least privilege. So the concept is, you can be a sysadmin, Brandon, but tomorrow's a new day. You're starting from scratch. You prove to me you're Brandon. I'll start to reassign you all your entitlements and privileges every time you log in. There's no trusted idea of you're into this company, or it's almost like a badge concept. Back to your physical point, I'm going to check your badge every room you're in. You don't just say I'm Brandon at the start and then you're good to go for the rest of the day. So
now would that be equivalent to like CyberArk or Beyond Trust with the privilege access management kind of tools?
You got it. So what I really like, I think PAM's an essential part of that. I also think PAM's an essential part of basic cyber hygiene, because over time, whatever your privileged set of accounts are, if you're not on top of them every day, they're gonna atrophy, right? You're gonna find people that quit, or if you switch several jobs, you start to group all your entitlements, and you have this set of admin rights. And so the CyberArks of the world do a very good job of focusing on privilege access, and that forces least privilege, right?
Right.
I'm going to give everybody the minimum. I'm never going to trust anyone, and every day I'm going to clean up. And so least privilege is a key aspect. End-to-end encryption is the other one, right? The whole I'm always reminded the whole purpose of cyber comes from kind of the Second World War and signals intelligence. Okay. And basically, I have a communication and some information on that communication that I want to protect. That
Right.
fundamentally is how most of the agencies ever got created, was out of the Second World War. And before that, in Roman times and blah, 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 you had crypto codes and whatever. My point is,
Right.
if you're going to go zero trust, you also need end-to-end encryption from the work from home user all the way into the data center and back out to the public internet. There needs to be some sort of end-to-end encryption, insurance thereof, that it hasn't been decremented to, say, a SHA-1 level that's too low, or that hasn't been compromised, right?
Right. Okay.
So two more. Microsegmentation. This is the big change, right? That you're going from secure zones and this kind of a defense in depth land strategy to more of a microsegmentation thing. And so that creates a lot of real-time, telemetry and identity and entitlement issues. On the other hand, I liken it to the presidential car. Back in the JFK days, you had a parade and you drove the president in a convertible, and you tried to secure Dallas, right? The parade route and the buildings, and not to get into Oswald and all that, but
right.
You had this defense in depth kind of thing. Today, you got the beast, right? You'd put Trump or Obama in this car, and you'd have his family, and what you got is a procession of CIA guys or FBI guys running around. The microsegment is the car. It's got, bomb-resistant flooring and bulletproof glass, and all you care about is Obama and his kids and his wife.
Right.
You don't really care about the parade. You don't really care about the buildings. Those are things you monitor. But if you look at the segment they're protecting, it's 5 or 6 of those Secret Service guys running around the car, and all they're looking for is threats. They don't have particular defense capabilities. It's a microsegment they're protecting. The streets and the crowd and the buildings, they're all, in play, but it's focused on the microsegment. Right.
And that makes total sense. I mean, you kind of narrow that right down, right?
Exactly.
And then you have more control.
Exactly. I'm going to control no one's getting in and out of the car. I'm going to control access. I'm going to follow it around. And when things are done, I'll shut down that microsegment. I'm not protecting the car anymore when it's empty. So that's microsegmentation. I've forgotten the last part. End-to-end encryption, least privilege, microsegmentation, and continuous monitoring of all things. So continuous monitoring is this whole point about why SIMs and linear stuff doesn't work. You've got to be continuously monitoring, to your point, for threats, because there's breaches. You've got to be continuously monitoring all manner of network traffic analysis, UEBA, VA scans. You've got to do that in real time and start to figure out a way through analytics to constantly look for threats. And that's, to your point on the Skydome and physical security, right? We're going to do everything we can to check people on the way in. But while the game's on, we're going to rely on video cameras, security guards, in the crowd with heads on a swivel. And it's constant, like a casino, right? A constant flood of data and the ability to process if anything's wrong and ability to respond.
Exactly. And that totally makes sense, right? And I think that's the evolution of, like you said, especially when going to the cloud. Anyone watching this, please make this checklist, right? This is things that you need to start to look at, like right now. Now, going for the future, companies now, we're in July now, going to, August and September. What are you recommending for companies to look at, like right now?
In terms of technology or in terms of security risk?
Just cybersecurity. If you're going to come in, you have my company XYZ, and I'm saying, hey, I need to look at cybersecurity. What are you sitting in the boardroom telling me about?
Okay, number one is let's relook at your risk profile. And I'm an architect and a solutions guy. There's people that make their business around risk assessments, and I've done my share of that. But because of the pivot, you're supposed to periodically check your risk profile. What are your threats? What are your vulnerabilities? And what are your crown jewels? So your impact.
Yeah.
And I think that's changed because of COVID and because of work from home. So my first thing is, hey, if things change, is your whole perimeter defense and depth posture, the crown jewel's now outside in everybody's house. Okay, well,
Right.
we need to revisit your risk priorities. That's number
Okay.
one. Number two, whether you go on ZTNA or not, and that's the buzzword, and I think it's right, and that's usually the conversation I get into. Number one is ZTNA. Number two is SOAR. Karl, first thing, I've already spent too much money and too much capital buying all this security stuff. And to your point on KPIs, the risk-o-meter hasn't gone down, so I'm kind of out of money. Let's talk about SOAR. Let's talk about people and process, because if you're going to come here and move the needle, it can't be don't send me a big PO. So there's that, which I think is good. And then the third place that I had everybody is cyber hygiene. It's great that we're running ahead to all these things and work from home and the data's outside, but right back to square one, did you ever get your act together in cyber hygiene? Do you have a full inventory, CMDB of all your assets, all of the software, all of the patches, all the configs? Because if you don't, you really don't, this home field advantage is gone. You don't understand your network. You don't have visibility on it. And me bringing in VA scans and PAM, which are, the other two key aspects of the big five is cyber hygiene. And on top of that, you have a SIM or continuous monitoring. If you don't have your CMDB act together and you don't have it in, if it's in a spreadsheet, it's probably pretty static.
Right.
There's some tools out there that I think do a really good job of putting analytics around it, Armis and Axionis, and they're starting to become a better single source of truth. More importantly, they can do MACD. They can handle moves, adds, changes, deletes. They can go search IoT for unmanaged stuff. Getting your shit together on that, to me, whether you're sticking with defense in depth and the SIM or whether you're chasing ZTNA, if you don't have your act together on CMDB, you're only as good. It's garbage in, garbage out on the data.
Right. And I think that's a very good point because, again, like the landscape has changed now. Like, where is all your assets? Where is, your resources? Where is all that? Like, and I think what happens, so many people transition so quickly, they didn't go back, or they're just starting to go back now in inventory.
Yep.
And maybe right now, business continuity is top of their list. Asset inventory, resource inventory is still down, and they're not doing it because, are we going to be open in the next 6 months? Are we going to be able to sustain this? So the worst case scenario too, and this is where I talk to people, is what if you get breached in that time?
Yeah.
Like, does it take you right out of business?
I got two answers there. It's kind of the Sears thing in the internet, right? It's good. The good news, bad news for Sears was you better go build a website because it's going to be online shopping. The bad news is they're still going to show up to Sears and look at stuff. So work from home, but return to office is going to be a thing too. And to your point, I, as a cyber guy, go, holy crap, what a big opportunity if you didn't have your CMDB act together. There's no one in the office. I can do a sweep. For once in a blue moon, I can go into the networks in the office and start to do an inventory. I can do some of the discovery tools that there'd be no way you could do on your network in the office during prime time. So as much as it's a Pandora's box of stuff outside, it's a huge opportunity before everyone comes back to work to kind of get your act together on your inventory.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, it's a good point. Now, to their defense, and I'm sure you're hearing this conversation, budget's a concern, financial, everyone's kind of, tied everything up right now just because, and I'm talking to CFOs and CISOs and all that, and they're like, well, we're still forecasting like daily now. Like each day it's changing for us. Like now, and like you made a comment, like some stores have gone from retail, in store to e-commerce overnight, right? Where 80% was retail, where people were going to the store, to now 60%, 70% is now online.
Yeah, I think I'll stop short of saying 2080, but where a lot of people were maybe perception is 80% perimeter or 80% of our data is in the perimeter, I think that might have flipped for a lot of companies to 80% in the cloud now.
Right. And it's, all these points and everything that you're bringing up is something that I think more people need to start to kind of really look at, just because everything we've talked about so far is what people need to look at today. I think they need to start looking at, start to evaluate as, business owners. Doesn't matter if you're cybersecurity, as business owners, you need to be aware of this to be able to kind of just be mindful that, it's not that number 10 or 20 down your list. It should be number 2 or 3.
I think you're right that first of all, the fact that I'm calling myself a vCISO now and people know what I mean, the fact that people are going, having a virtual CISO and he doesn't have to move to Halifax and be an HQ, is an admission of, well, the data's out there and so are the smart people. And to be honest, having a guy work in corporate for 10 years probably doesn't make him a better security guy. It's better that he's out in the wild.
Right.
I think it's a reallocation of priorities, right? That the SANS top 20 or the OWASP top 10, whatever you think your priorities map to, and that's what I meant by the kind of risk strategy. I think that's changed a lot, to your point.
Right. And I think it's good. It's good that, people like us are having this conversation and sharing this, just because, people, and I don't know what you're finding, but I'm saying that people are so overwhelmed, top down. I heard one guy's taking a month and a half off just because as soon as this started, he was doing 18-hour a day, 7 days a week, trying to make sure the business was still going. He's like, yeah, I need a break. I'm going to burn out.
I'm always careful with COVID, boots on the ground with healthcare people and the people who are bringing me my groceries and stuff like that. They're in harm's way, but it hasn't been fun. It hasn't been fun for the work from home people behind the scenes, right? The network folks and security folks, you're right. They're doing 1 year projects in 2 weeks, and it's great because they want to get it done, but they've been busy. They've been real busy. I'll stop short of staying on the front line, but it's not been a work from home vacation, definitely in the last 3 months.
Well, and that's why I think a lot of people haven't really connected with is, and especially I'll say this on the sales side, salespeople are going in, the newest and greatest wares and trying to, pitch and sell, not realizing on the other side, these guys are busy. These guys are overwhelmed. And just, from and I've been fortunate because of my podcast and also with the company I work for, we've been able to just give, free resources, free solution, or just even sit down, just how are you doing?
Yeah.
How are things going? Do you need anything? I don't want to put an invoice in front of you. How are you doing? And in some of the conversations I've had where someone just did that, like I did that to a CISO last week, he was like, you know what? No one's asked me that. And I'm just tired. I'm fatigued. I said, what do you need? Anything you need, let me know. I'll see what I can help you with. If you need extra resources, we got some professional services and team that maybe could just sit on the phone with you, answer any questions you might have. Or, if you just need a break for an hour, let me know. We can do something just to give you that kind of, break, that everything, and hearing him just go through all his challenges helped him to kind of reset, and then okay, I got to get back into this. But it gave him a little bit of a break.
A funny thing, Brad. I'm helping my son's on the sales side at InfoSec Global to do a plug agile crypto kind of stuff, and he's asking me that, Dad, you're inside, and people, how do I do this? I go, you know what? We're so fixated on the pitch deck and closing and the BANT, find the budget and do your job, and how many calls are you making to fill the funnel? The answer is, how can I help? And how can I help might just be let the guy exhale and tell you how busy he's been. And for sure, if you see an opportunity to help, great. But they definitely have vendor fatigue. And to your point, we stopped pitching and started listening. And to be honest, you talk to some really good salespeople in cyber, they're way more in the trusted advisor business, right? It's okay. First thing is I got to go understand my customer, and especially a CISO, and go, what's it like and what's your headaches? And eventually, maybe we get to solutions, but to be honest, the problem space is not well understood. To your point, the guy's got 99 problems and he doesn't have enough people. So he's got that, I can't do it all anyway. There's no way out of here. And so what he really needs is a consult, right? He doesn't need a pitch.
Yeah, or an invoice. Especially this is where the one I had a conversation last night with someone, and they were arguing, but you have to meet your quota, and you're talking about, you have to meet your funnel, you have to meet your quota, you have to do that. I said to him, bullshit, you don't have to meet that. Right now, be that trusted advisor, be that support person. When they need you, that's fine. But right now, we're in a pandemic. Yep. People are stressed, they're overwhelmed. If you put an invoice, he'll never talk to you again.
You know what? And a couple of vendors came to me with the caveat, I don't want to come across as an ambulance chaser. And that's true. It's a very important line in cyber, right? You do not want to be cyber insurance. I know you're down and out now and you need me. That's not the call you want to make. And to me, the answer was, and I'm just speaking on behalf of my son here, it's got to be a COVID POC is free. If we really think we can help and you're down and out, let's worry about licenses and money. But if we think we got something that can automate your, in our case, PKI inventory and help you build your CMDB, here, you're on fire. We'll talk later if you decide you want our tool or our help. But for now, like it's free. I don't see how else. If you're Team Canada and you're coming to the federal government and going, hey, I think you might have a work from home problem, I would go, you're helping for free because you're a patriot, right? Like you're not marking up the price right now. We get it. Someday there might be an invoice, but if you're asking if you can help and you're a Canadian company, help means free.
Right, and I agree with that. Right, and that's the thing. Like, and I'm totally in line with what you're saying. Right now, that's where we need to be as cybersecurity professionals. If you're doing well, you're above board. Go and just have a free chat. Like, talk to someone in a company and say, "How are you doing? How is things going? Like, do you need just a half an hour of my time just to answer any questions that you're going through, or even just to shoot the shit? Like, just to kind of give you a little bit of half an hour of a break." Because I'm sure, and this is something that a lot of sales guys don't take into consideration. A lot of these guys are like 6 o'clock in the morning till 9 or 10 o'clock at night, meetings, back to back, phone calls, and they make it like a 10, 15 minute break to grab something to eat, and then they're back in it. So for them to have half an hour just to kind of go, holy cow, this is stressful. This is kind of this is what I'm working on, and someone that say, like, really to care, like empathy. How are you doing with that? Like, do you getting a time to break? Like, that means a lot.
And you know what? I'm a vendor liaison. I kind of like it because I came from vendor land. So I have empathy for the sales guys. Like you said, they got to eat, they got quotas. There's a lot of consultants that, they weren't set up for work from home, so they're out of work. There's a lot of people like scarce skill, CISO, had a job offer, but the company shut down, so they're on hold. So I'm empathetic to the point of there's cyber people out there that need to eat and work. But to your point, on the inside, one, they're working hard. Two, they're empathetic they want to keep in the loop on vendor stuff. They want to be polite and take a demo, but they're busy as fuck. And cut to the chase and go, hey, what's your problem? I think my company has a whole bunch of products, but this one could help with COVID. It doesn't resonate. Right. But like you said, step one, what is it? Seek to understand, then be understood. If this guy's got a 15-minute break, let him vent his spleen. And if you happen to have a match for his problem, great. If you don't,
and ask permission. Don't, like, this is something for all sales guys. Don't jump down his throat. Right? Say, like, hey, Karl, I heard you mention that. Is that something you need help with? Right? Ask Karl. Like, don't go, oh, Karl, I have this opportunity and mine's the greatest solution and I know it can help you. Karl's going to say, fuck off. I'm busy.
Exactly. You know what happens is we go on mute. That's the beauty of Zoom, right? As soon as I, like I said, I'm on both sides of the coin, so I'm one to talk. But as soon as they hear the pitch deck coming, whether they like it or not, mute, and I'll go, okay, dude, you got to do it, man. Is it 10 slides? Is it 5 slides? I'll just wait until you're done and I'll politely go, thanks. But you've turned them off. You've totally turned them off.
Right. Right. And that's something like you guys are watching, you guys are in sales. Connect, ask permission. Like, hey, Karl, I know you're busy. You talked about all these things that are going on. You mentioned these 3 things. Do you need any help with that? And let you come to me and say, yeah, Brandon, or no, Brandon, I'm fine. Like, I've got that under control. Perfect. And let it go. Don't go and dig deep and try to go on. Because like someone like yourself is so busy, right? And so deep, you don't need someone trying to harass you, right? You need a support. You need that guidance.
The other thing I'm now that you mention it, as a guy on the inside that's advising some people, they're pretty effing smart, right? If they're in cyber, they already know what analytics is. The stuff we're talking about now, they've read about. They go and do their homework because they're not. You're not shopping for curtains here. It's not a commodity. So done their homework. They don't need to be educated. And the corollary is, if you're in cyber and you want to sell and hang around and be useful as a consultant or like services or product, you got to play the long game, right? It's a total trusted advisor thing. You're not selling widgets here,
Right.
So it's got to be, and it's scary stuff. It's a relationship business, and so to get in is very hard. To stay in and be relevant, to your point, is the guy's got to trust you. constantly. And then he'll reach out when he's got a problem. If all he sees you as having an agenda of meeting your quota, you're not going to last in cyber. And it's tough. I get everybody's got quotas. I get there's someone from the US pushing on Canada, and I get FedGov especially is a long sales cycle. But man, quarter by quarter is no way to do cyber sales.
And I think right now, and this is kind of, and companies won't like me saying this, but I think right now the quota model and the quarters and all that has to start to change. All right, because the industry has changed as how we do sales. Before it used to be you bang on the phone 80 to 100 calls per day. You try to fill up your funnel and you do that. Well, like you said, the people that we're dealing with are so much smarter.
Yep.
A lot of times they've got the resources first, and now they're looking for that person they're going to partner up with second. It's not, and I use it as a vacuum and sales guy, where you knock on the door. Have you seen this great vacuum? You're like, no, I haven't. Here, let me throw some dirt on your carpet and show you how it works, right?
Yeah.
It's not that sale anymore. They already know the vacuum. They know how it works. They know how, energy efficient. They know all that. What they want to know is who's the vacuum salesman they want to work with.
Yeah. It's, yes, I read a lot on spin selling, and, my son has come from places like the Source where you're selling, iPhones are complex, but you're selling commodities that people already know, right? So there's all those techniques of how do you close. To spin selling is all about how do you build trust. These people, it's a complex sell. It's a lot of money, and it's their career on the line every time they buy something. So they got to get to trust you before we can talk about a sell. And it's the other part you just made me think about, back to my InfoSec Global and let's sell PKI certs. You got to have a roadmap. So if I'm talking SOAR and ZTNA and I'm educated on it, and that's where my mind is, and you come and tell me I've got a PKI scanner, what you need to tell me is, okay, what happens when I find a problem? Do you know how to remediate it? Or are you just another stack of VA scans that I got to review because I don't have enough people? Number two is, you just told me that encryption's got a shelf life of 12 months now because of the hackers. Well, get me to quantum safe. I don't want to uproot. Don't tell me I got to uproot my crypto hardware every 12 months. That's not tangible. You need to solve that integration problem. You need to solve that automation and orchestration problem. Show me your roadmap that helps me, fix the problem. Don't sell me yet another tool that I got to integrate. And so,
and put more work on you, right?
Yeah, you're not, again, if you're selling me technology that's creating a bigger people and process problem, I can't solve those problems. I'm not getting top talent. I'm not keeping them. So don't add another tool that needs a rocket scientist. To your point on sales, the SE is pretty valuable in crypto, right? The SE is pretty valuable in cyber because it's a smart guy talking to a smart guy and a sales guy being a trusted advisor and being quiet and looking for a problem, right? And so you're dealing with some pretty sophisticated stuff, and that SE is hard to keep, and the person that he's talking to inside is hard to keep. So you better not be adding people work and service work and integration work to your solution.
Right. For sure. Totally agree with that. I'm totally on board with that. And I think that's, from me coming to cybersecurity on my objective, I owned a marketing company for 10 years and watching how people do business and then being inside physical security and watching how this has evolved. You have to have that. You have to have that solution. You have to have, when you're coming to the table, what do you need? I might have these great 5-10 solutions, but what do you need?
Yeah.
Do I match with that? No, I don't. Perfect. Maybe I would refer you to someone else, right? That's a trusted advisor versus, okay, hold on. I have this one solution I think you need. I'm going to shove down your throat. You probably don't need it like what you're telling me, but I'm still going to try to pitch and sell it to you.
I got to tell you, that's my, because I've been a CISO and because I'm pitching myself as value added as a consultant. If you're a good consultant, you should show them everything you know in 3 months and they should get another guy, right? And I like your KPI thing. My question as I leave is, did I move the needle on the risk meter? You had some KPI that maybe was impossible to meet. Did I, through recommending technology, giving advice, talking about roadmaps and people and process, did I move your risk meter needle in an appreciable way? Right. And I would argue the same thing as a cyber salesperson. Whether it's my son, Brad, selling PKI tools or VA scan or a SIM, are you moving that guy's CISO riskometer or not? Because
Right.
that's the outcome you're looking for.
Right. And for sure. And that's, I think, any sales guy, anyone you're talking to, anyone I'm talking to, that's got to be the KPI. That's got to be your objective, right? How am I helping you? Yes, you have the greatest product and service and everything, and it meets the Gartner top right chord, whatever that may be. But are you helping that person that's on the other phone, through Zoom, in the boardroom, whatever that may be? Are you helping them? If not, why are you there?
Why are you there? And by the way, as a CISO, I got a shelf life of 2 years. I don't have enough budget. I got a bit of a honeymoon period. But that's all I'm going to be able to do. I'm not going to solve cyber in my 2 years. I'm not going to have enough money or people. So I'm looking at the risk burn down list and going, let's deal with the top 3. And then,
Okay.
like a hockey coach, hey, when I left, the team was better. We may or may not have won the Stanley Cup, but we're further ahead in the playoffs. We got an awesome team versus when I started. That's kind of the client, right? And if you understand that he or she is not going to get everything done, but it's about moving the security posture forward. I think that's now we're on the same team, right?
Right. And like you said, what are you working on, right? Like in your roadmap for this year, what are you working on? What do you focus on? Is there anything I can help you on that? And that needs to be the conversation.
You know what? That's another thing I've learned. If I was to give advice back to vendors and sales folk, is if you're number 7, and we were UEBA, when UEBA, I put the E in UEBA, or our company did, it used to be SIM, right? And so you get in a conversation, and if you didn't have their attention in 30 seconds, they would say something nice like, you're number 7 on our to-do list. And we got all excited and went, hey, that put him in the funnel. He's 50%. The answer of, if you're number 7, we're only going to get through 3 this year. And next year there'll be a new 3. We're never getting to you.
Right.
So don't be number 7 on their security list. That's a plight. We'll never get there.
Yeah. Thanks for calling. Give us a call in a couple of years, right?
Or we'd love to research and dabble in that. That sounds interesting, but we're not on fire there. And you're what someone told me in marketing, painkillers and vitamins. Be a painkiller. Everyone pays for painkillers when they need them and they don't care about the price. Everybody should take vitamins, but they never do.
Right. No, totally. It's kind of funny you bring up that analogy. Like I was a clinical director for actually a multidisciplinary clinic, and it was funny when people were in pain, right? And they call this the pain and pleasure model. When people are in pain, they will pay anything and do anything. If you say, I need you to go to the garden store and eat this certain type of dirt, they'll say, where do I get it and how fast do I pick it up?
Yep.
Right. And they'll have shovels and they'll just eat it because they don't want to deal with that pain anymore. But like you said, when they're in the pleasure model, we're okay. We're good. Doesn't really matter right now. Right. And same analogy. And I think that's one thing when sales guys, be careful of doing that too. Don't elaborate or focus too much on the pain. Go be the solution provider. Be that one that kind of talks to them, lets them voice kind of what their concerns are, and try to, if you can provide a solution, be ethical, provide that solution.
The other part is, and I've learned this as a virtual CISO, this is the advocacy for, I learned a lot more being a virtual CISO than I did being a CISO. I got very good at one company, one thing as a CISO in the financial sector. And it's tricky, but every year it was the same, and I got better and better and whittled down the list. When you're a vCISO, everybody's risk profile is different. And so just because, you walk into a company and they go, PKI scans number 7 on our list, that doesn't mean the next one doesn't have it as top 3. It depends on the threat, it depends on the vulnerability, and it depends on the impact. So to me, I'd rather find out I'm number 7 and go, hey, let me know if I ever get to number 3. I'm on to the next client. Somebody somewhere has a different, everyone's got a different CISO risk profile. Make sure you're in their top 3 or move on.
Right, for sure. Most definitely. And then just build up relationships. And I think that's a key point. Build up rapport, because if that CISO, like you said, has a 2-year lifespan on that company, he might move to another company and he just liked you.
Yep.
He liked that you weren't pressured, you gave him value, and then he moves to another company and now you become the top 3 on that list.
Yep.
Right? And he's like, hey, Brandon, come on in. I know you were talking about SIM. It wasn't on my last, roadmap, but it is on this one.
The other thing is, you talk about training, and I admit to being slicing in. I do have some depth believe it or not. My forte is breadth across, say, all the CISP categories. And by chance, because I did some startups, I got some depth around UEBA and analytics and continuous monitoring. But the point being, I come in there as a CISO, virtual CISO, and I talk the talk, and it's all good for a couple of weeks, and I build a roadmap. And then they go, Karl, we really care about crypto. And I go, man, I know, like, I'm a 3 out of 10 on crypto, to be honest. Let me get you my peer who's spent his whole life in quantum and works with the Waterloo people, and I swap myself out or hand off. Same thing with pen testers, right? They're awesome pen testers, but if you start asking them about SIM, that's not their thing. And so making sure you swap people in and out in your own peer community, that's part of trusted advice, right? Yeah, I'm doing my peer a favor, and he or she is thinking, well, thanks for letting me in. My answer is, to be honest, they wanted to do a risk strategy, and I know you're an ace at it. So here, like, they're going to thank me as a CISO for bringing in the right person.
Right. And that's that's such a great point, because your client, your relationship now values that. Next time I have I'm going to ask Karl. Because Karl at least was honest with me that wasn't his wheelhouse. But he brought me someone that was.
Yeah, I think it works two ways. Now your network's very trusted. I think I've got a really good, I'm surrounding myself with people that are smarter than me, which was the benefit of coming up as a CISO and being an exec in a startup, is you're not the smart guy in the room. And so I think in security, it's surround yourself with experts, swap them in and out, and now you've got a trusted network outside. And the next step, is clients, right? Build your trusted clients. And I get it. They're not going to, I'm going to get invited in to a corporation I don't know by the trusted CISO. It's not me pitching, a company that doesn't know me. That's a big ask, right? Like, whether it's a lawyer or a doctor, you already want to know them when you got a problem. You don't want to be introduced to them.
Right, for sure. That totally makes sense. Now we're coming up on the hour. Now, is there anything else you wanted to add, Karl?
No, other than, was there any question that you wanted to ask that you didn't get a chance to, or something that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think we've covered quite a bit. I think my main conversation with you, of you being a CISO and a virtual CISO, was just kind of what you saw in the industry. And we covered that, like, in what was going on and kind of future thinking as well. I love to have that conversation, because I think more and more companies need to hear this, right? Need to hear kind of what's going on in the future. What are people like you with your expertise are looking at right now? And almost like you gave, is a checklist. Am I doing this? Am I doing this? Am I doing this? Do I have this in my roadmap? What should be important? I think that gave massive value for this, this recording this podcast, is so people can watch that and kind of go back and go through their own kind of checklist.
I appreciate that. And like I say, in my lofty ivory tower, I'm always worried about, what's happening on the shop floor. And I appreciate the insight, because things are changing down there just as fast.
Right. And I think is a good point, is that business now, as we know it, has completely changed. Right? It has completely changed the landscape, has completely changed the supply chain, like everything has changed. So now having these conversations is what's changing and what do we need to look at?
Yeah, I call it a Pandora's box. And of all the bad things that came out of there, cybersecurity is always an opportunity when there's problems. And what also comes out of there is hope. So I'm optimistic for the future. There's big opportunities, big problems, but it's a great space.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Karl. Now, what's the best way to get a hold of you? If anyone has any questions or needs your service, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll give you my phone number, and I'll give you my email address, but I've got a website called Galbraith and Associates, Inc. It's got me and my son on there. He's my BD guy. And
now, is that .com?
It's .ca.
.ca. Okay, so I'll put that in the link. If you guys want to email or give him a call, go to his website first, because a lot of great information there, right? We won't really kind of give out your phone number in that, because I don't want you to get a lot of calls, but go to the website, get that information there. If you have any questions of what we've talked about, make sure you reach out to Karl, because again, you can see so much value of that for people that are running companies right now, to at least sit down and have a conversation with Karl.
Super appreciate it. Super appreciate the podcast too. I think that's one of the best ways to get the word out is podcast, in my opinion.
Now, you have your own podcast, is that correct?
I do have one called Cyber Podcast with an IR expert, Steve Bowers. We're taking a bit of a break, but yeah, we're up on Spotify and all that. It's called the Cyber Security Podcast.
Okay, so I'll get that information. It'll be in the description notes below, guys, if you want to go subscribe to that and just kind of hear more of this conversation what Karl's talking about. So I'll have his website as well as the link to his podcast, so you guys can check that out. Karl, thank you so much for this. It was a great podcast, a lot of great information.
Brandon, thanks for hearing me out.
Oh, you're welcome. Now, guys, just remember, don't forget, software is hackable, being connected is vulnerable. I'll see you next Daily Cyber.